beautifully. This is about this little sketch about the size of a postage stamp, but distilling how simple it can be to change a simple road junction, rather miserable road junction, into a place just by placing a Madonna or a tree or a lamp, something in the middle to anchor it. And he began to sketch out many simple techniques. But a diagram in that book, which I really love, was him pointing out that the danger in placemaking and so on is that we create little small areas. Let's just go back one to that diagram if I can. Yes, that's right. Sorry. That if we create merely small, isolated ghettos of civilized placemaking, but still the interstices of the traffic running through, then we continue to segregate cities. And that our task is to break down those barriers that exist until the whole city is a coherent space through which traffic can move, but on different terms. And that really combined with a growing understanding of driver psychology, how we interact, and realizing that relationship between, a balance between people, the understanding of cities by children, and the movement of cars, can be handled in different ways. And so, more recently, we've seen examples of that, breaking down those barriers. This is one of my favorite examples in Aachen, in Germany, the main Hauptbahnhof, the main railway station on the bottom right, and the city centre on the top left, and a 5-lane relief road running between the two, a very common phenomenon. But this simple brushed concrete ellipse placed there to emphasize the place qualities of that arrival, and the as you come out of the railway station, of course, your route into the city is very clear. Let me just can we move on a slide if I could? For some reason this is jammed. Sorry about this. They're having trouble with the clicker for some reason. That's right. Great stuff. Let's go back. So that as you come out of the station, the direction of the city centre becomes absolutely apparent in ways that it wasn't before. And we see those examples in many places of Europe. This is the work of Bjarne Winterberg in Denmark, beginning to punctuate the streets with a series of simple placemaking, again using points. In Sweden, the creation of this square in the town of Norrköping, the University Square, still an important place for traffic movement, about 13,000 to 14,000 vehicles a day moving through this space, but where it's a space which, first and foremost, is about the activities around it and the movement between them. And as I mentioned, I think that people like Jan Gehl and many pioneers have begun to achieve wonders in the great cities, particularly here in Amsterdam. You can see those changes towards the magnificent places, Dam Square and so forth. But I feel our challenge is in the less well-known, the more mundane places that make up so much of our built environment. Those places on the edge of towns where we've gradually seen the erosion of. Sorry about this. Is a strange delay. Those places that we take for granted very often, but which divide up and break up small communities, so that the pub can no longer serve its clientele because it's a smaller area. Now, the person already mentioned that really made such progress in this, so the traffic engineer, Hans Monderman, you can tell by his tie, who began to really rethink, particularly he was a safety specialist, and realizing that places that spoke about their context, that had a story to tell, that were distinctive, were actually more safe as well as more efficient than the segregation, the anonymous segregation. And he began to work in small villages in his native Friesland, places like Machinga, where he removed every trace of traffic signals and road signs and road markings, and discovered that it made no difference to the ability of cars and lorries to move around, and it changed and improved the safety. So first and foremost, it's the connectivity between those places which is emphasized. he began to look at larger market towns. Places like Osterwolde, again a previously traffic signaled five-way junction, to create a simple a square called the Red Square. There's a little cafe called the Kremlin alongside it, but it's a space that's kept going by organising jaywalking across it. I think the local authority paid this old boy to walk back and forth. It's very successful. And of course, Hunts's masterpiece, as has been mentioned, where providing a seat for Gary, was the transformation of a space in a not very famous town called Drachten, where the Leviplane, the space alongside the theatre, was transformed into what appears initially to be a roundabout, but is actually a magnificent unified piece of placemaking, which allows the 22,000 vehicles and buses that move through that space to continue successfully. So I think that there's a language emerging, I don't want to dwell on it too long, but of realizing that streets work well when they are intimately connected with the buildings that they serve. So there's a clarity of where you are. You've no doubt here that you're in front of the town hall in this small Italian town, or that you're in front of the church and a wedding or a funeral may take place, but you can still move along. And we're seeing, I'm very encouraged to see small towns all over Europe beginning to recognize the qualities of placemaking. This junction in the small southern Italian town, making a sort of magnificent way to encourage the cafe and interactions that are happening in the forefront of that picture. So our work is often with very small